Good evening. Welcome to the Pullman City Council meeting for this Tuesday, April 23rd. Indeed, would you please call roll?
Mayor Johnson.
Here.
Councilmember Chapman.
Here.
Councilmember McCall. Here. Councilmember Weller.
Here.
Councilmember Parks. Here. Councilmember Wright. Here. Councilmember Records.
Here.
Councilmember Swanson.
Here.
You went different alphabetical order this time around. You were all over the place.
I know. What's up with
Yeah, I always wait for the last, the W's, and it just changed. Under announcements tonight, can't celebrate Arbor Day enough. Well, you can join the Palouse Conservation District on this Friday from 12:30 to 3:30 at 1615 Northeast Eastgate Boulevard, Suite H, for a quick lesson on planting, followed by work preparing and for planting native plants along stream banks. And they'll meet at the PCD and then gather equipment and plants and lead out on a local site. Free admission, but please pre-register. You can do it at eventbrite.com. You can actually go online. You can find it from there. On Tuesday through July, discover new worlds of virtual reality at Neal Public Library. Youth between 13 and 17 and adults 18 plus are invited to experience VR during the Library Tech Tuesdays from 3 to 6. You can download the complete waiver form from the library website. Be picked up in hard copy at the library as well. Pre-registration is suggested as spaces are limited, but drop-ins are permitted. And one project that I know a lot of our council members have been involved with, I know, Nathan, you've had to clean the place up a little bit, and that is our Pullman Depot. They're going to have a celebration this Saturday at noon to burn the debt, because they have got the debt paid off. It's $200,000 from generous donors. They'll even be blowing the train whistles. So if you hear a train whistle at noon and you don't see a train, it's coming from the Pullman Depot. So just give you a little heads up on that. Well, those are the announcements tonight. We have a number of different presentations tonight. We're going to first start with Gary Jenkins, our police chief, with an Outstanding Citizens Award recognition.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Tonight I'll be presenting an Outstanding Citizen Award to Mr. Bobby Graham. Mr. Graham, if you could come up, and if your son wants to come up with you, you can do. Okay. All right.
He's your videographer, I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's got a job.
He can come up here to shoot it if you'd like. You don't have to sit in the back row. This is a big thing. Your dad's getting honored here. Right there. How about that? Okay.
All right. On March 28, 2019, members of the Pullman Police Department staff contacted Auto Body Supercenter for assistance in relocating a motorhome from Latah Street to Ramblers RV Park in Moscow. We could not have expected the incredible customer service that you provided in response to this request. You went above and beyond by offering your services free of charge and by contributing your personal funds to ensure that the vehicle had enough fuel to make the trip. You demonstrated compassion and generosity toward the RV owner and made a positive impression on police department personnel. I'm honored to award you the Outstanding Citizen Award in recognition of your contribution in an extraordinary manner that substantially assisted the Pullman Police Department personnel in completing their duties. You are a prime example of the caring and compassion that make us proud to serve the Pullman community.
Congratulations, and thank you so much for your kindness. Our second item tonight is a dial-a-ride update from Wayne.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. It's certainly a tough act to follow. I do have a slide presentation here. To start off with, the word in quotes, paratransit, I'll just start off by giving an interpretation of that. In transit, that is parallel service, side-by-side service, or equal service. And in Pullman, what is dial-a-ride? Well, dial-a-ride for us is anyone over 65 or older automatically qualifies for use of our dial-a-ride service, as well as those who are medically verified to not be able to use our fixed route service. It's a door-to-door service. We use vans for this service rather than the buses. and it is a shared ride. Many people are surprised that it's not a single ride, but it is a shared ride. Often it does turn out to be one or two people, but it should be expected to be a single ride. And it does have a fare. I'll touch on the actual fare structure later, but it's not free, even for ADA. This is a fare service. So, you might ask, why not just stick with the bus service? There's a little thing called the ADA we're all familiar with. It's a requirement, and it provides equal access for all. But before ADA, we were compliant with a service or with a piece of legislation I was not really familiar with until I researched it, the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. The piece to the right there is a 1986 flyer, and an open page shows we had Dollar Ride then by the same name, and a very similar service at that time. So we've been doing this, buses and vans, side by side, since the start, which was 1979. The name has raised a few questions. Why Dollar Ride? Well, no particular reason. It was the common name at the time, I'm sure. A few other agencies at the top of the list. Link, which is what Wenatchee calls their own fixed route service. They call their Dollar Ride the Paratransit Link Plus. And a few other examples. Our neighbors in Moscow also use Dollar Ride. And we're open to suggestions. I'll mention that again towards the end, but it is what it is. Our current status, we have more than 500 registered patrons to ride our Dollar Ride service. The majority are seniors, 65 and older. And you can look down the list. The temporary, another word for that is conditional, seasonal, or temporary needs based on injuries or medical reasons. On an average day, we have 85 one-way rides. A really busy day will surpass 100 rides. And that's a lot of moving drivers. Our drivers keep busy on an average day, let alone when we surpass 100. And in a typical year, for the past 4 years, we've given over 20,000 rides. That's a lot of rides for a service like this. And at the most, we have 3 vans on the road, which for us is a lot. And oftentimes, you're on Grand, you'll see all 3 of those moving people. Funding is always something you can't forget about. Our general operating budget, Dollar Ride, accounts for 20% of that. And when you see 20,000 rides and compare it with fixed route, you count yesterday's, today's, and tomorrow's fixed route rides, we're already 20,000 plus rides in fixed route. But this is about equality, it's about what's required and expected, the type of service that you want us to provide. In the past, our grant funding strategy was to pair one application with fixed route and Dollar Ride together. And as a result, we received about $240,000 for the biennium, which that's a 2-year grant cycle. Prior to the 2017 grant application, I separated those. We did 2 applications. We did fixed route separate from Dollar Ride. And as a result, instead of $240,000, we received $634,000 specifically for Dollar Ride. To the far right, I note the local match, and we're trying to get that higher. That's why you'll see the bottom 2 figures, which any day now, literally any day, I expect a phone call. I expect Mayor Johnson to get a letter saying this is what our award is. I haven't seen it, but I do expect it to come through. It did drop by $6,000 this year, but that is us trying to increase our local match. And when we increase our local match and still can set aside money in the reserves, I would say we are very stable for the long run with requesting state and federal funds. So my goal is 70% local match for these grant programs. Once a patron is aware of our service, wants to get started, we do require an application, whether it's paper or download it online, fill out and email a PDF. But even our automatically qualified senior citizens, we do want a record of who you are, how to get a hold of you. So everyone has to do an application. The paratransit basic service for those under 65, but with a disability. We require medical verification. And then ADA, which, as you noted in a previous slide, only 39 of our 500-plus patrons have found the need to qualify as ADA. Really, paratransit, verified disability, that's really all you need if you're under 65 to get full service in our system. ADA just guarantees that you can travel in another system like ours. We will email, phone call, fax your qualifications to another system. It also guarantees next day rides, which we don't guarantee for non-ADA, but it is usually not a problem to get next day rides in our system. The fares are 60 cents per ride. They will go up in August, hopefully the last of our two-phase fare increase, and I'm thinking last for quite a while. We offer a discount for buying tokens, and prior to I think 2017, we did not offer passes for Dial-A-Ride. Now we do. We offer monthly passes, annual and semi-annual passes, just like we do for the fixed routes. Same pass structure is available for Dial-A-Ride. And we have a fairly comprehensive Dial-A-Ride handbook that's now been updated twice with policies, procedures, riding tips, about anything that we can think of that applies to Dial-A-Ride is in that handbook. Our schedule is the same availability for rides as our fixed route buses. We are unique, I'll say, in that we do accept same-day rides. Most systems across the country, when the dispatcher comes in, when the driver takes their seat, the rides on the books are the rides for the day. We allow rides to be filled in. We take cancellations. We backfill those trips. So we're unique in that way. We can take your request to go to a medical appointment or a grocery shopping trip or a hair appointment. And we also don't have a lot of rides at night. So we do ask that our after 9 p.m. rides be pre-scheduled. Otherwise, we have a driver sitting doing nothing. The daytime rides on campus are generally covered by the CATS program, Cougar Accessible Transit Service. We do the to and from campus rides, as well as the hours that CATS doesn't cover. And between the two of us, we cover WSU's needs quite well. So once a patron is registered, here are some tips that I've gathered from our dispatchers on how to make the most of our system. The phone call is how you register. I'll touch briefly on technology later. Right now, we don't have an online way to schedule rides, so call that number. You'll be in touch with a dispatcher. We take subscription rides, which are your recurring rides. If you go to the same place, same time, twice a week for at least 2 months, we can book you on a year-long subscription. So if there's an opening, you don't have to keep calling every week. And there's a cap. The ADA sets a cap at 50% so that the regular caller can do their grocery trips, their medical needs that weren't pre-scheduled. So 50% of our rides at the most should be subscription. After that, it's the regular caller who wants up to 30 days out. So we'll take rides from now up until, let's say, May 24th. If you want to call tomorrow and schedule a ride, that's how far out we'll go. If you want a same-day trip, so you call tomorrow, your best bet is to get a ride afternoon. If you want to call and schedule a trip for next week, as far as call volume and rides already taken, your best to call between Monday and Wednesday. Thursday and Friday, those rides for next week are already getting taken. And if you would like a more leisurely, less pressured chance to talk to a dispatcher and schedule next week's rides, just call on a weekend. We have Saturday and Sunday dispatchers. That's a prime time to talk about future ride scheduling. We have 2 dispatchers on site. If you've been to our facility, there's a fixed route dispatcher and a Dial-A-Ride dispatcher. We have a full-time Dial-A-Ride dispatcher, and then when she leaves, we have a half-time dispatcher that finishes out the evening. The driving shifts for all of Pullman Transit, we have 32 driving shifts, and of those, 8 shifts have an assigned Dial-A-Ride driving shift throughout the week. So 1/4 of our drivers do Dial-A-Ride at some point through the week. This is our full-time Dollaride dispatcher, Jessica Tolan on the left, and on the right is our senior driver and senior Dollaride driver, Randy Wendt. He is our most senior driver of all Pullman Transit drivers. When we have our twice annual driver signups, he can pick any route he wants. He can do an express route, he can do the blue route, and he has always, in my memory, always done Dollaride. So that speaks well to him and to this service. The fleet that we provide the service in, we have 5 Ford vans, all with rear lifts, and one MV1 it's called. It's the taxi cab looking vehicle in the forefront of the left slide. It has a ramp on the side. Our vehicles range from 2005 to 2018, and the capacities really vary based on how you configure people who can sit in the seats or who have a wheelchair. We can have 8 seated passengers, or we can have 2 wheelchairs and only 1 passenger. Just really varies. Of those 6 vehicles, they're all a little bit different, but quite a range. And I noted at the bottom, these are all stored outside. It's been that way for a long time. We're starting to discuss future facility expansion, which would include putting all of these Dollaride vehicles inside overnight. It'll be good for wear and tear, be a little warmer in the mornings in the wintertime. So that's a couple years down the road, but that is on our mind. So a closing slide, the future, the direction of Dollaride certainly is growth, no doubt about that. We're looking ahead to August, which is when we make any major changes, and this will be a minor one. We'd like to insert 2 hours of additional service. This isn't that request. We'll come to you in advance if and when that is the case. But that would take us to 4 full-time Dollaride drivers. Right now, 3 are full-time and 1 is 3/4 time. And just that slight increase of the 3/4 time to a full-time would be a consistent face on that 4th van, and that makes a big difference. Rather than a different driver every 2 or 3 days, same face every day for familiarity with the vehicle, the people's needs, customer service, that would be critical. As we grow, we'd like to keep the uniqueness that we do have, which the same-day rides I mentioned earlier, that is a nice feature for Pullman. And the idea that all of our senior citizens are immediately eligible for the service, I think that speaks well to the service we provide and the service you want us to provide. And I'd prefer that not change, frankly. Technology, most of the technology updates I've given you over the years have been about our fixed route service, the mobile app, for one. We could send out Dollaride app updates, but we don't promote that that's going to be available to those customers. So as we look for software updates, we'll certainly look at that particular feature. If users of our Dollaride system have the ability to get updates or alerts, we would like to provide that. We also would like to offer what right now is a fairly expensive feature, the automated call feature. Our current software would do this, but when we checked into it, it's $100,000 to upgrade to a system that would call the Dollaride patron when the van is 5 minutes away. We backed off when we saw the price tag, but it is available. And the last feature that seems appealing is to allow the user to not call in, but do it electronically. In my experience, something like an Expedia. You want to schedule a trip, you do it online, get confirmation. You don't have to talk to a person. Maybe some people prefer not to. Maybe hearing is an issue. I think in the future, as we look at options, we'd be wise to keep that in mind. The chart at the right, the graph, shows our ridership for the past 4 years, over 20,000. It is growing. Will continue to grow. There's no reason that I expect it will not. So the name change, I left that wide open. If anyone has an idea as to maybe something more appealing, something that describes functionally more what we do. Most of it is dial-in phone calls, but it's not immediate. We do often put you off till later in the day or next day with availability, but we're not stuck on the name. It's currently Dollaride, but we'd welcome suggestions and open to questions.
Questions or comments? Nathan?
More of a comment. Thank you so much, Wayne. I've heard so many people, elderly, those with limited mobility, just speak praises about Dial-A-Ride. I myself in 2000, when I was a sophomore, used Dial-A-Ride, and I wouldn't have been able to get to my classes if it weren't for this service. So really appreciate it. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Eileen?
Yeah, thanks, Wayne. You know, you and I have had quite a few conversations, and I keep thinking I'm going to come up with some brilliant new name for Dial-A-Ride, but that hasn't happened yet. But I really want to, you know, just really thank you for being so flexible, and I know you and your people have presented at the senior center to try to, you know, get everybody on board so they can use the services, you know, as it's intended to be used and get a happy and satisfied customer. And you've just always been so open and so flexible, and you've taken a few hits at a few gatherings, and you've taken it with extraordinarily good humor, and I know you work every day to continually improve that service. It's just a gem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dan?
I have a couple questions. How do you address the issue of people coming to town for a football game and maybe having a mobility impairment? Would they have to contact Dial-A-Ride ahead of time and get like a
They
transfer
would. They would, and that's where being pre-certified in any other system as an ADA patron, it makes it easy. And for our patrons to go outside, if they're pre-registered, we email, fax, we are in communication with other systems to let them know quickly this person is pre-registered, pre-qualified. It happens rarely here, but that's all it would take is if they're an existing ADA patron in Community Transit, King County Transit, Link Transit, Yakima Transit, they would just ask the contact at that transit agency to let us know, and we would schedule them a ride. So it's not limited to Pullman residents, it's limited to Pullman service.
Right. And my second question, do we have mechanics or technicians that are certified to repair or kind of check the lifts in the vans?
We do, I don't recall ever having to send lift work out of town. Yeah, our lift work is done locally, city repairs.
And just a comment on the name, I've heard some people with some concerns about the name Dial-A-Ride because they feel like that means they can just call and it'll come and get them. And I'm sure that you're familiar with that kind of comment on it.
That's the one thing that makes the name deceptive.
Yeah.
And again, we're open to options, comments. Right now,
The only
none come to
option that I
mind.
can think of that makes any sense to me would be Pullman Accessible Transit, but
So long, yeah.
yeah, the PAT, right, the PAT.
Scheduled rides, then you don't have Dial-A-Ride, okay?
Maybe we can get one of our council members to sponsor that name.
You done?
Yeah.
Al?
The South Lake Union Transit?
I have a couple of questions. My mom uses the service or has used the service, and I think this is a great service we're doing, but I've heard some complaints a little bit about being able to get a ride and scheduling and that kind of thing. How many same-day rides are we actually able to accommodate?
Well, if we're sticking with that 50% threshold, then half of the 85 should be same-day rides.
Okay. I'll be honest with you, she doesn't hardly even call anymore because it's been so hard for her to schedule. And she loves the service. But you know, I know we have 3 vans on the road. We're at that point where maybe we even need more on the road. What do you think?
I agree. I think the 2-hour expansion I mentioned for August could be put there. We haven't really identified where that service, block of service hours will go. But 2 is just a minimum. I believe we're due for more than 2 hours. And needs like your mother's are what we need to hear to know where to put that added service.
Yeah, and she tries to call in advance, you know, and she's called more than a week in advance, and it's booked up. Now, I don't know how long ago this was, but, you know, I'm just telling you from conversations that I've had with her. And so I think this is good input. Do you actually survey or get evaluations from your customers? And they say anything, or do we do anything like that?
No, we don't solicit. We certainly receive our fair share of comments, positive and negative, but we don't have an active means of polling.
That might be a great idea at some point to solicit your current clients.
Sure.
To see what their thoughts are. And the thing is they don't want to say anything.
I understand.
And that's the problem.
They want the service, yeah.
Oh, absolutely, and it's a great service, and I would like to improve it as much as we can so that they don't get frustrated where they then don't call anymore.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, thank
When
you.
you first rolled out the new software, that's when we were starting to hear a lot of the complaints, but I haven't heard those complaints. Once they've gotten used to the software, know that within this window, you'll be picked up.
Right, we offer a 20-minute window, and that's been a decade ago, 2009, I think we rolled that out. So,
Dan, did you have a...
Yeah,
Room for
just follow up
improvement,
based on something else said. When the dispatchers do require or get requests for pickups, do they have a way to log that as a denied request?
we do. We log all requests, accepted and denied.
And
I would just add that I have a coworker who was in a serious car accident, and the dial-a-ride service, once she was somewhat mobile, was the only way she could get to and from work. So it actually enabled her to come back to work much sooner than she otherwise could have. And
Good to
the
hear.
drivers were always professional and polite, and really, so it isn't just for our senior citizens. A lot of people who just are not able to drive even for a short period of time, it really helps them out.
I've had former students the same way, that they had an accident or had a broken leg or something like that, just dial a ride to get them there, so.
Good.
Again, it's been very, very, very effective. Any other comments? Pat, thank you. Wayne, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next comes the board docs voting demo. And after this, Keegan, you'll get your report in before we have the flood reports. Okay? So, board docs first and then ASWSU.
Okay, if I can have the council get out of the current meeting and go to the April 22nd training.
Oh, boy.
Just go to meetings.
It's really simple, I promise.
Yes, I know.
Well, if it's really simple, then why isn't it simple? Just
There's
say-
20.
saying so doesn't make it so.
There it is.
Yeah, I just did.
Coming up.
Okay. So what we do at the beginning of the meeting, I will take roll call, and I can't show you on my screen here, but on my screen here, and I will take roll call. If you are not here, I uncheck you, and then you will not be counted in the votes. So the first thing we're going to do is the city clerk is going to demonstrate board docs voting. So I'm demonstrating. So the next one, we're going to authorize free coffee Fridays to employees that made you laugh on Thursday.
I'd like that to be called out of the consent agenda.
So, being that this is the consent agenda, you will still do it like we normally do, where Glenn takes a motion and a second to read it by title only, and then Laura will read it by title only, and then we'll go down to the bottom here on number 4, and then whoever approves, or whoever makes the motion and the second to approve the consent agenda as accepted. So I'm just going to select randomly, I can't see. So now, we're going to take a vote. I open the online voting, and you should have them items pop up for your vote.
It should have just popped up for you.
Are you
All is a single slate, right?
I'm sorry?
All is a single slate for consent.
Doesn't show up in mine.
I don't have it either.
Are you logged in?
Yeah,
Is it on yours?
I checked yours, Lynn Johnson.
So you need to log in.
I am logged in on this one here.
Yeah, but you don't get to vote.
I know I don't. This is where the real difference comes. Yeah, but you spoiled me
Click
on
on that right
training, you
there.
let me vote.
You need to log in.
Gotcha. All
So
right,
you-
thank you.
There you go. You got yours?
Yes, I already voted. Anytime coffees, yay.
Click the training.
I think this Taco Tuesday, we're on to something.
Oh,
I don't know about the polka dots, though.
Yeah.
Did you get yours?
I think it should just be Taco Tuesday for all.
So you don't.
I just sit here. What do you think I have my backup copy? The old teleprompter. Yeah, we'll always have copy. Get burned once, you don't get burned twice.
Yes. So it tells me who voted and what their vote is.
But does that show up there?
It will as soon as I record the votes.
However, when I do a voice, I'm going to be calling for a vote. And they can do the thing at the same time, so everybody in the public knows.
So
But
this,
it will show up.
Yeah.
So it was moved by Ann and is seconded by Nathan. And I am going to, let's see. Are you in there, Nathan?
I am working on it.
Okay, well, I'm just going to vote for you,
Sorry.
okay?
I'm just
Yeah,
going to point out that the youngest member of the council is struggling.
He's a security threat.
So now
I
I'm
don't know if I'm the
going
youngest anymore, am I?
Yeah, I don't know.
to close the online voting.
Sorry.
I tried, yeah. No pressure. It's not accepting my username, so.
There's a little lag.
You realize how much I like to move a meeting along, just so.
This is training, so
well, okay, I'll wait until we get to the next point.
I should just do that abstain one.
We got a
So
long.
now it tells us the final resolution of the consent agenda, tells you which member voted and how they voted.
All the time.
So actually, that would be a vote where we would have to then take the consent agenda items separately,
And then our,
the nay vote.
Yeah.
So if
yeah.
somebody, would mayor still ask if we want to pull something out?
Yes, I
and do
still
it?
do it
Yes,
verbally.
yes.
Yeah.
And
But
then-
I can change that
and then
from
we
here.
would do that and
We're
then
going to
come
stick
back
to a
and-
lot of the major things we've been doing.
Yep.
We just augmented with this.
And Mayor, it would probably make sense at the first meeting, first couple of meetings as you do that, to give the council a chance to look at the screen and
Oh, yeah.
confirm that it reflects the way you intended to
Right.
vote before the result is announced.
And you can change your vote before, as long as it's before I close it.
no,
Before you adjourn.
Yes, you can, before she,
Yeah.
voting remains open until the results are announced by the chair.
She would close it when the chair announces the
Okay.
results, but the results will be visible to the chair on the screen. So that's why you'll have the opportunity, if you've made a mistake in voting, or you want to change your
But I just want to make it clear
then you would have that
that,
opportunity. That's
I
why
just
I
want to
was-
make it clear that the device does not close the voting. The
No,
chair
the chair.
closes the
The
voting.
chair,
Yes.
yes.
Okay, we'll do one more.
Pet rocks.
Okay, we'll do Pet Rocks. So the motion
Very
is,
controversial issue.
yes,
so, I'm sorry, so if Do you record who makes the motion? We just say it like we always?
Yes,
and then
I
you
record it.
Record it and it shows up.
Correct. It's all touch screen for me, so,
It already logged me off once.
So this is simply an electronic record.
Right.
Yes.
As compared to her writing down the minutes, she's recording it in the system.
Yeah, thank you. Okay.
so now we're going to vote on an ordinance of the City Council of Pullman, Whitman County, Washington, related to the registration requirements for all persons engaged in the production, processing, distribution, or collection, cultivation of pet rocks in P-Town, USA without a permit.
We're out of control.
I know. I know. Okay, so,
So what I would normally do on this particular situation, I would ask for, is anyone would like to make this is a training exercise, this is
Yes.
training. You would like to make a motion on this matter?
So moved.
Okay. Anybody make a second?
Second.
Okay. Would you read the resolution, which we normally do?
Ordinance number 56-9, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Pullman, Whitman County, Washington, relating to registration requirements for all persons engaged in the production, processing, distribution, or collective cultivation of pet rocks in P-Town, USA without a permit.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We don't have a participation we used to have. You can say aye and punch your thing in at the same time, or were you ready at that time?
I was ready.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was,
Okay. So,
okay.
again, I guess we can't vote verbally and punch a button at the same time? Or how's that work?
Yeah, how
So,
does that
okay, I still think the voice vote, right, moves right away, and then they can log it in? How's that?
Sure, absolutely. Or otherwise, you're relying on Dee to log it in. But that's been the case
So let's
historically. She's written down
practice
your
that one
votes.
more time. So we have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay. Now-
Abstentions? Because I did not see Councilmember McCall vote.
Well, these are some of the niceties of this system that we have yet to address and work out. So you can put me, well, never mind what I was going to say.
Well, every
I'm abstaining.
council member does, even if it's a voice vote, every council member does have to vote either by, or to express either their vote or their abstention. So, because the clerk has to record all.
What if they choose to recuse themselves for cause?
You have to state that on the record.
State that before we go in there.
But then it's, how is it recorded in this device?
Abstaining.
And it'd be an
But it's a
abstention.
recusal for
It's an-
cause.
It can be noted in the minutes as such, but in terms of the voting, it's abstaining from voting. The reason why you are abstaining is because you've recused yourself, because you believe you have a conflict or someone, that would really only come up on the appearance of fairness ones. The
Oh, so we're
quasi-judicial
recording the
hearings.
appearance of fairness on this device as well?
No, the quasi-judicial votes, the only time it would, that's, I don't want to say only, but that's the only time I can think of right now where a council member could be recused from voting by a member of the audience or by another council,
Last
another
question.
council member.
So if a council member is excused, what my concern is that if a council member's voting record is requested in terms of a public records request, yay, nay, or abstain isn't really accurate. If they are excused, then they're excused, and that should not be recorded as an abstention. So if they are absent, that may be recorded as an abstention. These are a bunch of things that we need to work out.
No, excused only applies when the council is excusing someone from not being in
At the
attendance
meeting.
at the meeting. That's a separate motion that's recorded and done right after the roll call. So if a person is not at the meeting, they're absent, whether it is an excused absence or an unexcused absence, they're recorded as not attending the meeting. They're recorded as being absent.
But if somebody's looking back strictly at a voting record,
It
like
will show
Nathan,
that
like
you
Nathan
didn't attend.
was at was excused while he was on his externship. So if somebody looks back at his voting record, it would show, just at his voting record, it would show that he missed that he missed
At
a
the
lot of
council meeting,
votes.
that he was
Well, it
not
was
at the
right in the
council
minutes.
meeting.
But that, if
Absolutely.
someone just requests a voting record, that's not going to show. That would have to be shown, they would have to request the entire
Well,
minutes.
actually, we don't keep voting records separately, so what they would get would
See, the
be the
whole thing.
minutes of the meeting.
Get the
Okay,
minutes,
if we're going
not
to
it.
keep voting records separately, then, but
don't-
that has not been made
No,
clear.
It's
Do
all
that.
part of the minutes.
That has not been made clear.
This is a device, this is a software program for recording minutes and actions. That's all. It is a computer attempting to replace Steve, but he
No,
will
it's
still
not.
need to help
Yeah.
the computer.
It's an aid for all
Yeah,
of us.
it is not, it's nothing unique.
And so far, we've saved at least 3 trees
So
with not printing everything out.
with the thing, I think at the training we did, I made a comment about, if somebody requests voting records, the way that would work with the public records request, and Laura, correct me if I'm wrong, would be somebody would request the voting record, and we would say, we don't have that record. So the only way that they could request that is by requesting the minutes.
Which
to
are
get the
online.
voting
Right, and
records.
actually what we would do is we would simply say, here's the minutes, because this is the record that we have that is responsive to your request.
Right, we don't have to create a document
No.
to
No.
respond to a
No.
records request.
And plus, it's available to them, so it saves another public record
Yeah.
request.
Absolutely, it'll all be available
Yeah.
online.
Okay?
Did you want to do one more, or are you guys
I
comfortable?
think we need to move on.
Excellent.
D, I will have to still not log.
I'll help you.
Okay, later.
City phone code.
Okay, we are back on the council agenda, and at this point, Keegan Otter from ASWSU, they're doing a really great project this year. You know, over the past, we've had a lot of issues down at the dunes and the cliffs with a lot of trash. And ASWSU, and thanks a lot to Keegan, has got groups down there cleaning things up, so we have a better reputation for WSU students. And it wasn't just WSU students. University of Idaho Vandals were down there too. So
Oh, yeah, I cover all-
people. So I just want to make sure it's clear, it's not just WSU.
So I'm here to talk about the ASWSU initiative or new project, Operation Keep Cliffs Clean. This was an idea started out of my department, started by me, but I have a lot of partners I'm collaborating with. So ASWSU Executive, Community Affairs, ESA, GIVE, Pullman Disposal Service, I'll get to that in a minute, WSU IFC, WSU Panhellenic, Greek Life in general, and some city council members have helped me and guided me along the way, as well as the CCE. So remembering the cliffs, let's take a little flashback to memory lane, spring 2018. Thousands of WSU and U of I students went and enjoyed a nice sunny day down at the Granite Point, also known as the Cliffs. The aftermath of that fun was over 800 pounds of garbage left at the scene, and the park was then immediately closed, and you found that the Army Corps of Engineers was calling upon University Recreation and WSU students for help. Like, they just were outnumbered by the weight of garbage. So what was the ending result? The cliffs have been gated off, making it almost impossible to access. You can still access if you're willing to go over the gates. Yet students like myself, because I was going to put the garbage bins in the park, can continue to go to the park since the gates are still there. It just makes it more difficult, but students can and have been enjoying the cliffs this spring so far. The solution, Operation Keep the Cliffs Clean. So basically, similar to Adopter Block, which you might have heard of, there will be a scheduled cleaning volunteer groups, just Greek chapters as of now, every Sunday afternoon, starting in the spring. So this started last weekend, was our first initial big clean. We have a prep group, when necessary, going down on Thursdays, and they will replace the 7 garbage bins that we have with lids that are weighted down with 60-pound weights and lined with 33-gallon bags. They will replace those bags after the Sunday crew goes and empties them out. So the reason we chose to do Thursday is, if you're familiar with the culture around here, a lot of students think of the weekend starting on Thursday. So I said, let's combat that, and you know, a lot of people will head down Thursday afternoon or Friday. If we miss the folks on Tuesday and Wednesday, you know, we learned, but most of the statistics point to Thursday and Friday and Saturday being a heavy day down there. We strategically placed 7 garbage bins that were given to us by Pullman Disposal around the park towards the roadside, not towards the water, so they don't fall in that way. And I've tested them, like, there's no way you're knocking those over unless you, like, roundhouse kick them. So for the CCE partnership, we reached out to Pullman Disposal Service, since it's their assets down there, seeing if they'll be our partner in helping keep us accountable. Still working on that, has not been closed yet. if anything, I could use your help and resources in reaching out to the Army Corps of Engineers. The CCE was struggling to reach out to them, so I picked up the phone, started dialing, got a hold of somebody. The ranger that I've left messages for was out of the office again, but consistency will persist and finally get a hold of him, hopefully, but if you could help with that, that'd be great. So here is the video kind of outlining what we did. I don't know what to press for this. Oh, that's not it. Yeah, I figured.
Here it comes. Save it there.
Yeah, but I just zoomed in on it. No worries. Well, hey, if you follow ASWC on social media, the video's there. It's playing again tomorrow and Friday. We try to play it every Friday. In short, it shows, wow, all the fun that they had last year, but then reminding them, hey, remember when we trashed this? Well, ASWC was partnered with so, and so, and we strategically placed garbage cans. And then it shows B-roll of me pointing out where these garbage cans are. Long story short, wherever you access the park, whether it's from the far side of the parking lot, kind of by just like the, down by the grass, or if you access it through the sideway where there's kind of like a little trail, easier to access the top of that cliff, there are garbage bins around the park. And it's making it pretty easy for, like, you can't miss it. And they're all spread out to where one garbage bin won't be, like, completely used more than the other. It's pretty much traffic is you're gonna hit a garbage bin if you're walking blindfolded in that park. So it's been working out very successfully. We've had a lot of groups go and pick up trash, and we've heard from other people that the cliffs have been really clean this year so far. I'm waiting to test it on a big weekend. So moving forward, the tagline I've kind of come up with this to kind of sustain the message is to hold fellow Cougs accountable, keep our parks safe and sustainable. Alexander Pan will be replacing me. This is actually my last report and last city council meeting I'll be attending. He is a local, and he has been the head of my community affairs committee. He's more than capable. He's outstanding and plans on continuing this in the summer as well as carrying it over to the dunes. So he'll oversee Operation Keep Cliffs Clean. And we will continue the success of this project over the summer, early fall, like I said, including the dunes, and see how it goes from there. Hopefully, it's something that becomes a habit moving forward.
And you've got a responsibility one, too, but all students be responsible. What you carry in, you carry out.
That's another message we've been spreading.
Okay.
Like I said, hold fellow Cougs accountable, so whether you're an alumni or not, whether you're sophomore, junior, senior, I don't care. If you're a Coug, keep our parks safe and sustainable. It's a Coug thing.
Yeah, Dan?
Is Alex going to bring the same level of enthusiasm?
He was at our 7:30 meeting this morning and watching Keegan operate, and he actually had a lot of comments that he made, so.
Oh, yeah. He's really, he loves this role, and he's gonna take it from where I left it, and pick it up from there. I have no doubt in my mind.
Nathan?
So my question is, how has this been received? I used to go to the dunes and everything like that. As an alum, I gotta say, trying to hold fellow Cougs accountable is very difficult. Even as something as small as having dogs on leashes in parks and calling people out on that, there's a lot of pushback regarding that from fellow Cougs. So how has it been received so far?
I actually, before everything was thoroughly planned out, I brought this to the attention of many Greeks during Greek Week, where we had probably 700, 600 people in the audience that were of Greek chapters, and people were like in applause, like, this is great, this is a solution, this is what we need. You had a lot of people, I was at the dunes myself last year, packed in a cooler, packed it out. And so I told people, like, if I could do it and I had a cooler, you can too. Like, come on, we can have fun, but this is our home, these are our parks. And a lot of people resonated with that, and a lot of the people, because I asked in the audience who's the first year and then who's been here last year, and a lot of, obviously the freshmen were just like, what's this issue? But a lot of people that remembered or were there were like, this is the solution. I'm behind this because I was one of those that went there and maybe I left some trash. They realized the damage that was caused. They don't want to ever have that brought down on the community again. So a lot of cougs, even via social media, we've heard good results, and it's been working. And a lot of people have signed up. 12 chapters total, so it's about, I think, 6 fraternities, 5 fraternities, 7 sororities have volunteered, and it's around 30 members total, and as a team, going every Sunday.
Fantastic. We wish you well, we really do.
Thank you.
Yes,
Yeah, thanks, Keegan. You know, you and I have been communicating about this, and thanks to Devin Felstead for jumping in on this. And yeah, I have every confidence that this will maintain itself and will not have this problem again, because we made a lot of regional news on that before, and that was not a good thing. So this will help sort that out.
Made it further than just regional. It was very ugly out there.
No, we hope this will shine light on the community. Obviously, bad news makes it to the media front page first, but hey, after many years of this successful plan being implemented, we'll see where it goes.
Great, thanks.
Appreciate it.
And thank you for your service here, I'll tell you. We've really appreciated you, and this is your last council meeting, so thank you.
Thank you, it means a lot.
Okay. Now we start the flood reports. We've already had the garbage reports, now we move to floods. And so in order, we'll have Kevin and Clayton and Mike and Gary.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'll just give you a little bit of background information. I was actually out of town 2 weeks ago, so Clayton will have most of the pertinent information from that night and the following day and week. But as you know, Missouri Flat Creek was the creek that flooded in town, and this is a picture of the drainage basin. So Missouri Flat Creek comes in here on North Grand and basically traverses over into Idaho, and it's in the, if you know where Viola is, that's kind of the area where it ends. And then Paradise Creek is just south of that. Both of those drainage basins are about the same size and make up total maybe a little less than 20% of the total South Fork of the Palouse watershed. So. I didn't want to do that. Yeah, so this slide shows the floodplain. So I got this from Department of Ecology's website. If you just Google floodplain in Pullman, you'll get a GIS map that you can just then zoom in on. So this is Missouri Flat Creek along North Grand, and up at the top is Stadium Way. So Min's and Councilmember Sorensen's office is up there. The car wash is, right about here. It's a little bit up here. Tractor Town is here. Our wells are in this area. So as you can see, most of North Grand Avenue is within the floodplain, and that's kind of what we observed 2 weeks ago on Tuesday night. And this is the 100-year floodplain. So just a couple other things before I turn it over to Clayton. Most of our flood events are typically rain on snow. And so in that event, basically, there's a certain amount of water that's captured in snow, and then when it melts quickly, that water runs off, and if there's rain on top of it, it just compounds it. And so major floods in Pullman in the past have been rain on snow events, typically associated with like a Chinook. Interestingly, the mayor got some emails from the meter group about some of their sensors that they had up in the watershed, and they went and looked at the data for that Tuesday night and that Tuesday during the day, and what they found was that the soil was actually saturated. So the rain that had preceded that during the week and during that day basically saturated the ground. So when there was a cloud burst in that watershed, it essentially just all ran off. So kind of that flash flood issue. The last thing I wanted to point out is when we had all the snow in the watershed back in February, we were concerned about flooding because there was quite a bit of water in that snowpack, and fortunately that came off. well, but we did quite a bit of prep work. We, inventoried our sandbags, which we have at M&O, looked at our aggregate supplies if we had to get rock out and fill sandbags. We did some tree trimming on Missouri Flat Creek, so we actually had crews go in and trim. We trimmed at the car wash, both upstream and downstream. At the Emerald, there was a nasty tree that kind of went out into the Missouri Flat Creek that got trimmed up, and then behind the chamber was quite a rat's nest of trees in there that we cleaned out. So we did a fair bit of work in the 6 months prior to 2 weeks ago. So with that, I'll turn it over to Clayton.
All right, thanks, Kevin, and Mayor and City Council. So I thought I would start with just kind of going through a little bit of how we plan for floods. Typically this time of year in the spring, especially when we had that snowpack in February, we are continuously looking at stream gauge data. It's online. It's through the National Weather Service, and there's a gauge on the South Fork of the Palouse River here in Pullman. And that link shows the current flow in the river. It shows the flow data for the last 7 days. And then it also predicts flow values based on the weather and the forecasted weather for the next 7 days. Those predictions are also updated throughout the day, a couple times a day generally. Leading up to this event, the predicted values did not suggest any level of flooding in Pullman. Typically with floods, a flood watch or an advisory is issued ahead of the event. And then we can use that time to prepare for the event. We've all heard the term flash flood, and honestly, this is the best way for me to describe this recent flood event. As you know, there was no warning, and it truly did catch us off guard. I remember checking the stream gauge a few minutes before our council meeting that night. Everything looked great. Then right after the council meeting, the river had jumped 2 feet. My first thought was there has to be a malfunctioning gauge out there, but it really did jump 2 feet in just about an hour. At this time, I'll just take a few minutes to briefly highlight the response and activities performed by Public Works during the event. So our M&O staff quickly shut down Well 4 and Well 7, which is located at the intersection of Grand and Ritchie Street, once the water had breached the Stadium Way Bridge and began traveling down Grand Avenue. This was followed up with sandbagging activities at each of the well houses to save the wells, which was successful. The Department of Health was notified of the situation. Other key activities performed by M&O included traffic control for the closed portions of road, flood wall installation between Subway and Mimosa, and staffing and monitoring of the Pine Street Plaza Bridge, per our standard operating procedure. Once the water levels rescinded, the crews quickly cleaned Grand Avenue, and it had reopened by 2:30 a.m. The crew at the wastewater treatment plant were also busy. A 2-man crew manned the plant throughout the night. They did an excellent job, and they were able to pass all of the extra flows through the plant, thankfully avoiding a direct bypass situation to the river. The effluent pumps were in operation for about 7 hours, and staff estimate the peak influent flow during the event to be about 16 million gallons per day. According to the supervisor out there, that's the highest he's seen. Public Works also had assistance from the engineering staff and the stormwater staff during the flood. Their work primarily involved monitoring the event and the other drainages in Pullman, where we typically see flooding. Overall, we learned a great deal from the event. Since then, we've also held a debrief meeting to discuss the event in more detail, to document it, and to use the information to help with planning for future events.
Questions? Yeah. Brendan.
Clayton, thank you. I happened to be on the other side of the country when this came about, and it was like a gut punch. I grew up in Centralia, Chehalis, and flooding was not new for us, and so I didn't expect this either. And I really praise all the hard work that went into the incredible amount of hours to clean things up. You mentioned some things that you learned. What are some of those things that we learned that you think might help us?
So I think the biggest thing for me that I've took away from this event is, like Kevin had mentioned, we have a lot of flood preparedness meetings ahead of the flood season. And generally, we've had this notion that we'll have some advance notice. You know, typically there's a flood watch or an advisory posted. We have 12 hours, maybe 6 to 12 hours to prepare. That wasn't the case this time. So knowing that now, it changes the way that I look at those meetings when we prepare for the flood season. That's probably the biggest takeaway for me.
We had a good meeting with the National Weather Service the next day because they came down, because this didn't even appear on their charts either. And we'll have another meeting with the U.S. Geological Survey coming up next week, because one of the things we asked for is, can't we have monitors up there by Viola and the other places in the watershed so we can get advance notice? And so that's part of the discussion that'll take place. National Weather Service said that's possible, and they also talk about a $10,000 a year maintenance fee. But, and then it all depends on which agency is going to pay for that. And so.
And we have a meeting with them scheduled.
Right. So
Do we know these meters, so the meter group would check the meters or whatever their gauge is to find?
we're going to have a presentation from them pretty soon. at
Okay,
one of our
I was
council
wondering if they
meetings.
had real time, like if they got stuff real time or they had to go out and check.
No, they had some of the stuff that
Yeah,
Dan's seen it.
They can just log in and check what their meters are doing. So they have some real-time sensors and some that they have to go down and pull data from. But that's where I think the disconnect has been in how we typically think of floods in this area is based on the sensor data that you're used to checking. But this was a unique circumstance because of the soil saturation. And that's combining those two elements is what led to this event.
And then I was checking my app for the weather, and the big dark green was just hanging over. Usually it passes, and it just stayed over the Pullman area. It just stayed here and just kept pouring. So, Nathan?
Yeah, 3 questions. Actually, both Councilmember Records and Brandon here mentioned it, but the meter group, part of my question was going to be, is there a collaborative, effort that we can do with them? But apparently, this is being already worked on. The 2 other questions, one is the building where Carnahan Chiropractic, Snap Fitness, Raleigh, so on and so forth. Now, that's been the second time that place is flooded in the last 3 years. With it being, of course, lower on in elevation there, is there any way to mitigate a future flood? Because obviously, I would say this will probably happen again sometime in the future, not saying to this degree. Is there some way to mitigate? And then I have one other question, so I'll let you answer that for that building.
Sure. So like Kevin mentioned, it is in the floodplain. Water, there would be, the best way to do it would be to try with sandbags. When water breached upstream of there, ran down Grand Avenue. And then when I got to their driveway, it's lower.
Yeah.
Water goes to the low spot, and then it wrapped around their building, all the way around their building, the water did. So potentially a big sandbagging effort at that driveway to shed the water back in, to keep it into Grand. This event, the water depth was so high that, and it came so quick. But
as you mentioned, with it being such a flash flood, I wouldn't see how sandbags, even if it wasn't at that level, could be mobilized in enough time to save that area. So do you believe there's some engineering, any way to shunt that water away from that building? Because I expect this is going to happen again in the future.
I don't see a permanent fix with
Okay.
the way the building is lowered and, but they want to keep driveway access there at that point.
Yeah. Okay. Second, this is the other question I had. So now we went through flood mitigation, I believe it was 2013, or maybe it was a little after that, and widening up the stream bed downriver. Now, is that was when Mark was here, is correct?
Yes, that took place with the project to basically redo North Grand in that section. And so we did a riparian project that in our flood, in Pullman's flood hazard mitigation plan, there's a half a dozen projects, and that was one of them, was to increase the capacity in that portion of Missouri Flat Creek. So from approximately the bridge across the state highway at UPS, upstream to, kind of about where the car rental place is up there. That's how far up that project went.
So do you feel, I can only imagine if we hadn't done that, the devastation that would have been, it would have been much worse, I would expect.
Yeah, I think it certainly helped quite a bit. I've been trying to, and I think the police department may have drone footage, and we haven't been able to see that yet, but I'm wondering, and it was a question we asked during the debrief today, I think we know of potentially 4 places the river breached, but we don't know if, or the creek breached, but we don't know if it stayed within its banks during that area that was widened out to try to pass the 100-year flood. So if we can get good video of that, that might give us the clues we need to know for sure.
Yeah, I was actually, I think you answered it, but going to ask if there are projects upstream that we may need to address later on, but I think
Yeah, the
that's...
car wash is definitely one of them. So that's a hydraulic bottleneck in Missouri Flat Creek.
Well, at least we know the waters were navigable at one point, right?
There were some individuals trying to use a regular mattress trying to float the thing.
Yeah.
Al will go to Al next, and then Eileen.
So I've had some people in the public ask me some questions, and one of them has to do with Grand Avenue and the reconstruction and the raising of the elevation of Grand Avenue from Mobile, basically past the Ritchie Street turnoff. Was that, and I need clarification on this myself, the reason, why did we raise the Grand Avenue in that area?
I'm not totally sure. I called the designer this morning, who's been retired from the city for quite a while, and had a conversation with him. And part of the thinking was that if we could capture the water there and redirect it back into Missouri Flat Creek, it would help with flood control. I don't know if there were other reasons for raising the road or not.
They were trying to keep everything on that side because it used to jump at Cougar Country and some other places.
Yeah.
And by raising it, they could keep it over there in that part.
Yeah.
And I think at the beginning of the Tuesday night, we actually had 2 pumps set up. So there's, if you're familiar with where the car wash is, there's a little bit of a sump in the ground there. And there's a pipe that goes through a dike to Missouri Flat Creek. And so during high water, we shut the valve, but then we have water build up on the west side of it where the Grand Avenue is and the businesses, and you have to pump over the dike. So we actually had 2 pumps set up that were keeping up for a little while, but at some point when there's so much water, there's, not much we're going to be able to do.
I'm glad Al
So
brought
there
that
was,
up.
there was comment made to me that one of the reasons we raised Grand Avenue was because of the Ritchie Street intersection. Did that have anything to do with any of that?
I'm not sure. we'd have to go back and research that.
Okay. So just some personal comments. The major breach that occurred that caused the flooding just north of Stadium Way was the culverts, or whatever you want to call them, for the bridge that goes from Grand Avenue over to the Jack in a Box property, is where it first started coming across there. because it debris and things clogged up at the culverts, and then it went up and over and then down Grand. So that little bottleneck there occurs a little bit before the car wash.
You're talking about at the bridge over Stadium Way or at the Jack in the Box?
Jack in the Box, from Grand Avenue to Jack in the Box.
The driveway.
And you've,
That's what I saw too, because when I was coming down Stadium at 5 o'clock, that's where it was starting to get to that level.
yeah,
Was that Jack in the Box?
Yeah.
I was amazed at how much straw came down, especially looking at Snap Fitness and every place else and under cars and everything else that came off that, so.
you know, and I mean, and once there was so much water, you can't push it, so.
It looked like we had, in our debrief today, upstream of Jack in the Box was one of the places that was mentioned as a breach at Stadium Way at the bridge there. And then down by UPS at the bridge that goes over. It also filled up all the way to the railing on top of the bridge. So essentially, at all three places it breached. Is the best information we have at this point.
Anything more? Eileen?
I think you've done a great job with a very difficult situation, and I'm getting sort of a sense of the body here that in the face of increasingly inconsistent weather, that I know you guys are on this, but to take a hard look at, especially in new construction, to rethink the 100-year floodplain thing and think of the might be's and especially, I'm not saying tear everything out and start over right now, but because I think we'll be looking at events like this more often in the future. I just see that, like my crystal ball is pretty foggy, but this one kind of looks like it. And so I'm sure you guys are already on that and really thinking about more what ifing. I know you guys, that's what engineers do. You do a lot of what ifing and you like to solve problems. But yeah, really keep that in mind that with the weather being as crazy as it's looking like it's trending over the long haul, to really look at, like what Al pointed out, that may have been inadequate I misspoke. It may have been adequate for the last 75 years or whatever, but it may not be adequate for the next 75 years.
So timing is unbelievable, but there's a lot of talk in flood insurance and flood mapping and all that kind of thing. And I just read an article today. There's a big push for nationally to revamp the whole flooding thing and come out, because our maps are so old and we're building in places we shouldn't be building. People don't know that they're in a floodplain or that kind of thing. So there's a push to go out and redo all of this stuff and get some new information for things. And I think you're going to see that happen as these disasters continue to occur. Ours was small in scale, but it's not just the coastal areas. It's in interior also. And it doesn't have to be along a river or stream.
Okay, Nathan? And then I'll go back to Kevin.
Just a quick, so I think it's important also to thank the police, fire, all the emergency services, the public works. All of you did amazing. I mean, absolutely amazing. And even given the chaos of the lookers that were going down and trying to cross that area, you all did just amazing. I do have a question because Al brought up some good points. When I just happened to run across the owner of the building, was it Tractor Town? He had mentioned that the raising of that had aided in kind of the problem. This is what he says. Yeah. This is what he says. Now, my question is, do we have a mechanism to discuss with business owners that are in that floodplain, hey, look, we have had floods in this area, your business lies in this area, we might suggest you looking at flood insurance in any way, because all of those businesses...
He had flood insurance.
Yes, the businesses did not.
But the businesses did not.
Yeah.
And he had letters that had been written by, because I've met with him too, and I've met with some of the businesses. Letters going back to 2005, stating he's in a floodplain.
Yeah.
So that was pretty clear to him. But-
So we do have that mechanism where it's sent out to the businesses in that area?
Only, it really is only triggered if somebody develops in the, if they want to remodel or do something to a structure that's in the floodplain. We don't really have a mechanism to notify current businesses if they haven't done a project that, hey, you're in the floodplain. And
So you might mention at this point, because obviously I had phone calls and you did as well, but we have floodgates at Evolve on Main. There's certain requirements that you had to have in order for Evolve on Main to be built, and it involves flooding.
Yeah, so it's in city code. You can do a remodel and not bring the building up to current flood code if it's less than 50% of the value of the structure. So it's called substantial development. So some businesses, it's considered a hardship if you want to go in and do something, and then you've got this huge thing where you got to raise the building up 3 feet or put in floodgates. So that's one provision some businesses use to not upgrade their building if they're going to do a project. Evolve on Main, they were building a brand-new project in the floodplain, so they either have to elevate the lowest floor a foot above the 100-year flood, or they have to flood-proof the building, and so they've got the boards they can drop in, and it's very similar to the Taco Del Mar across the street, and some of the other projects that have been done in Pullman downtown since the flood code went into effect. So
We have other reports from fire and from police too as well.
Thanks, Clayton.
Clayton, thank you so much for all the work. And Mike Hessen, our fire chief.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. So, like Kevin, I was out of town, so I think we see a pattern here. But we have great people that took care of it, whether I'm here or not. So I started about 6:30 that night. We got a call to Grand and Whitman Street to do some traffic control because the flood was coming down, and they got to help stop traffic with the rest of the PD. And at that time, the intersection was flooded coming down Grand Avenue. And then we got a call just north of Ritchie, halfway between Cougar Country and Dismores, for a person that was trapped in a vehicle. So we started heading down that way, but the water was probably up to about a foot, and then we talked with Brian from M&O, and so to go slow because we didn't want to overflow the well there, so we actually went slow and pulled our vehicle off onto Ritchie and parked it at that time, and then they walked out to that vehicle and helped get them out of the water. And at that time, the water was only about a foot deep, and it was still kind of slow at that time, so. And then the water kind of rose from that to about 3 feet in just a matter of minutes. It just went crazy after that. And, then we got a call from dispatch that we had several people trapped in cool nails on the end of that tractor building there. So, and the main water coming down Grand Avenue got into that hump that we've been talking about, and it pushed it right around behind that building, and it was a couple feet deep, and it was rocking. It was moving cars behind that building, and they couldn't get the doors open to get out of the building, which is why they called us in the first place. So we were able to access that building from there, and then Captain Ryber went up on top so he could get a little better vision of what was going on, and the plan was to get them out of that building and get them up behind the well up on some dry land. So at that time, we started putting our life jackets on and getting the ropes out, because we're not a water rescue team by no means, but we want to make it as safe as we could. And started to get on there and see if we could access. Then about that time, Reserve Firefighter Chapman worked with M&O and got on the loader, which was awesome. So we couldn't really get them out and walk them out, so we went to the north end of the building and with the end loader and went down there and broke a window to get in. And then those people were all standing or sitting on top of the tables to avoid the water, because the water was already pushing up like that in there. So they loaded everybody in the end loader and got them out there, including an infant. It was a dozen people plus an infant we rescued out of the cool nails. And then Sergeant Brashears from the police department and Captain Ryber kind of got together and kind of started coordinating things at that point, a little higher up so they could see up on Ritchie. And then from there, they went from the tractor building to the laundromat across Grand to get some folks out of that building. Got a call for that. And then from there, they went down to the State Farm building to get another person out of there. And whether these were real emergencies or not, they were word to the person at the time, but and then took care of that with the end loader again. So you can imagine, and the water was, up in the middle of the tractor tire on the end loader, so that's still, and it was moving pretty well, with still cars are moving down Grand, so way too much for somebody to be standing out there. And then they had some folks on the pedestrian bridge right across the street by the laundromat. A whole bunch of people were out there gawking, looking at the water, and the water's pushing up against there, and at that time it was coming over the banks. And so we're hollering at them, and then to get out of there, because if they'd fallen in that thing, they'd be gone. And actually had a report of somebody up behind on State Street by the grain supply that was coming down, and they tripped and fell in the water, and they were rolling in the water, so we physically had to go yank them out of there, so they couldn't get up. So it's serious. So we sent the end loader over there, and they tied off some safety tape to keep the folks off of there. And then we assisted with well 4. Our crews went over to help do some sandbagging really quick, and then set up some lights to see what was going on. And then about that time, there was 8 people over at the mobile gas station that called and said, hey, come get us. And we were kind of tapped out of resources, and the water was going around the gas station fine in Cougar Country. And so we said, hey, you guys just stay put for a minute until we can get to you. You guys are fine, just stay in shelter in place. And then a few minutes later, they call us, and now we got somebody with a diabetic problem over there. So we loaded up a medic and another EMT, put him in the bucket again, sent him over there to check on the patient. Patient was fine. But while we were over there, we just said, hey, let's take care of it. So get in. So we made 2 trips, took care of all those, got them out of there so we wouldn't have to go back again for some other issue. And once they did that, about the time the floods started to recede, which is about 8 o'clock-ish, somewhere in there. So it kind of, as fast as it came in, it went away about that fast. And then about that time, we started getting some of the barricades and intersections in place, and then we went back. So with that, I just want to give a big thanks to the police department and especially Public Works for helping out with end loader. Otherwise, we would have never been able to get over to those folks safely. And Captain Reiber and Brashear, and then Michael Chapman as well too, and the end loader. And Whitcomb did a great job, and Chris Waring as well, the fire marshal, was out there talking to the media for us. So I saw he got a field promotion to fire chief on one of the videos.
I'll teach you to leave.
It did. I'll hand it over to him. So that's about all we have for that. So entertain any questions.
Okay, Gary? Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Well, contrary to rumor, Kevin, Mike, and I did not synchronize our schedules to be out of town all at the same time, but that's what happened. But as Mike said, we have great staff that are well-trained and we can rely on to address anything that happens. So we had, we're using a timeline of a time mark of about 6:30 p.m. is what we're calling the flooding event. So leading up to the flooding event, between 5 and 6:30 p.m., we had 3 officers working at the time on swing shift. And during that time period, we had 11 flood-related calls for service, where we're starting to get flooding in different areas of town, most particularly along North Grand. And then we had 1 non-flooding call, disorderly subject at Dismores. Then at 6:30 is when we started seeing significant flooding. And so between 6:30 p.m. and 2:30 a.m., our officers handled 25 calls for service. 14 of those were flood-related, and 11 were non-flood-related. So it's just a reminder that even though we have an emergency going on in town, the law enforcement calls and the fire calls don't stop for other events. We had 3 officers on until about 7 p.m. Sergeant Brashears and Detective Ingo were on a panel discussion at WSU, and that was from 5:30 to 7, so when they cleared at 7 p.m., Sergeant Brashears came out and coordinated with the fire department, and Detective Ingle handled some calls, and then he is also one of our drone pilots, so he was able to deploy the drone and get some footage of the flooding. We called in off-duty officers, 3 off-duty officers to assist in the response. And then when Commander Tennant cleared the council meeting, he also deployed and assisted with coordination. And then our graveyard shift came in at 10 p.m., which was 3 additional officers. So I'll note that it was either, Glenn, maybe you know, on Wednesday or Thursday that Adam and Code Enforcement Officer Sorum contacted businesses. It was either...
They were doing it Wednesday.
On Wednesday.
Yeah, the next day.
So on Wednesday, City Administrator Adam Lincoln and Code Enforcement Officer Sam Sorum went in person and contacted the impacted businesses along Grand Avenue to try to start assessing damage information and just make that contact with those businesses.
And they did additional on Thursday as well.
Right, so we did some follow-up, and the preliminary information we have at this point is that we do have a list of 19 businesses that were damaged, including apartment complex. 10 of those are listed as extensive damage. And one of those 10 is an apartment complex at Ruckus North, used to be Campus Commons North. We have been in discussions with State Emergency Management, who are also working with Small Business Administration. They will be here tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. to meet with us and to conduct a survey of the damage. I believe their intent is to set up the Small Business Administration in town for a period of time to allow local businesses to just talk with them and find out what resources are available for them. I'll also talk a little bit about what Clayton spoke to was the water level gauge that we have at South Fork of the Palouse at State Street. We also monitor that gauge, and we had been monitoring it. And as Clayton indicated, it does give a predicted level in that river. And even though we don't have gauges in the other other rivers in town or Missouri Flat, it does closely mirror flood stages for the rest of the creeks that go through town. So it's been a fairly reliable gauge for us to watch to see if we're nearing a flood stage or a warning stage, and what the predicted level is. And then what happened, there was never a predicted level above the very bottom of what would be called the warning stage, so well below flooding stage. From 7:15, a 3.5-hour period from 7:15 to 10:45, the level rose 1.5 feet. So the volume and short amount of time of rain that we did receive was not predicted, and so that's why we did not have that predicted flooding level in the stream. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions on that? Before you leave, Gary, I thought you might want to brief the council. As you well know, Cowlitz County Sheriff Deputy was killed, who actually was a Whitman County Sheriff Deputy. And I just want you to know that our Pullman Police Department is covering shifts for the Sheriff's Department right now. State Patrol is helping them, so a number of the Whitman County Sheriff deputies could go to the funeral, which will be tomorrow.
Right, and we also have some of our officers going to the funeral, and our chaplain, Matt McNally, is actually going to preside at that service.
So when I came back from Spokane this afternoon, I did see a Pullman police car at the sheriff's office. So I just want you guys to know that and that's the way normally this thing happens. I mean, some of you probably remember when we had a Moscow police officer killed, and everyone stepped up to help out. So again, thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Mayor.
Just a couple other updates. Wednesday morning, I was out there at about 5 o'clock in the morning, just checking on before I had to do the radio interview, which ended up was the morning. But we had reach out from the governor's office immediately. We were placed in touch with their emergency management people immediately. And so as a consequence, we had conversations with them. They were in town that Thursday morning. We had a meeting with them, 9 o'clock. Went through all the different steps to make sure that the local businesses could be given some assistance and reach. And at this point, the dollar amount does not reach the full threshold of a state-declared emergency. But we declared a state of emergency. You'll see it in your packet here tonight. I hope you will confirm that. But also Whitman County did as well, because Whitman County had a lot of damage. And Whitman County state of emergency covers us as well as our particular one. Consequently, we have met with a number of we talked with All our federal representatives reached out to us, personal calls from Kathy McMorris Rogers, both Murray staff and Catwell staff called because we have a good relationship with the airport, and they were saying there's ways that they could help too. And one of them might be this monitoring device going up the Missouri Flat Creek, and especially that $10,000 a year maintenance. So we are working on that one as well. And the U.S. Geological is a good move to have them here next week. And the Weather Bureau said they would support it when we talked to them too. So Commerce has reached out. I personally met with the owner. Adam did as well. I've met with some of the businesses that were there. So we are reaching out. Obviously, there's a lot to clean up. And I heard from the owners that take at least a month to clean that up.
Oh, yeah.
They're still working their way through it. But anyway, from our standpoint, it was a flash flood. And we were just grateful that it got out of town as quick as it came in, as opposed to Nebraska. I went to Camp Murray the next day, Thursday, when I had to be at an Olympia meeting. And so they said, well, why don't you stop by Camp Murray and see our emergency management? So I was over there and talking to them as well. And they have like about 4 or 5 state employees that have been in Nebraska for like about 3 or 4 weeks because the flood is just still. And they also send people down to California for the wildfires. But that's the way different states work, it's a mutual aid kind of thing. So anyway, that's all we'd give you, everybody, an update for that tonight. So with that, let's move to our consent agenda. These are items that are considered routine in nature. Do I hear a motion to read by title only?
So moved.
Second.
Move to second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? With that, Laura, would you please read the consent agenda?
Thank you, Mayor. Your consent agenda consists of a motion to dispense with the reading of the minutes of the special meeting of April 2, 2019, and approve them as submitted. A motion to dispense with the reading of the minutes of the regular meeting of April 9, 2019, and approve them as submitted. A motion to dispense with the reading of the minutes of the special meeting of April 16, 2019, and approve them as submitted. A motion to approve disbursements represented by accounts payable checks numbered 95399 through 95585, totaling $1,353,855.35. Payroll checks numbered 74410 through 74519, totaling $91,152.96, and electronic transfers totaling $1,832,980.38. A motion to transfer $238,103 of retail sales tax revenue to the restricted CIP reserve fund. A motion to authorize an interlocal agreement for Whitman County Mutual Aid between Whitman County Fire Protection Districts number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, the cities and towns of Albion, Colfax, Farmington, Garfield, La Crosse, Malden, Oakdale, Palouse, Pullman, St. John, and Tico, Pullman Moscow Regional Airport, and the Whitman County Hospital District number 2. And a motion to authorize an interlocal agreement for emergency medical services between the cities of Pullman and Palouse and Whitman County Rural Fire Districts number 4.
Is there any item the council would like to offer discussion? Seeing none, the consent agenda consists of items 1 through 7. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Move in second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Now we go to the regular agenda tonight. First item is a resolution authorizing the intergovernmental sale of certain property to the city of Palouse. And with that, our Director of Finance and Administration, Mike Urban.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Before you tonight is a resolution to authorize the surplus and the sale of the 1997 MedTech ambulance to the city of Palouse for $1,200. There's a memo included in your packet that delineates the VIN number as well as the equipment ID number. Much to the item you just approved in the consent agenda with the mutual aid agreement, in my discussions with Chief Heston on the sale price, the original estimate came in at $1,200 to $1,500, and because of the mutual aid, the value in the mutual aid, we felt that the $1,200 amount was reasonable because we're going to get more than that probably in mutual aid response coming back, as well as the fact that the City of Palouse is already a willing buyer at this point, so we don't have to put it out on the market for the extra $300. And with that, we're here to answer any questions. Chief Heston is still here, and I am, and we do recommend the approving the resolution as presented.
Questions or comments? And the city of Palouse really is in need of this ambulance, I can tell you that. Judging by the emails we've been getting on a regular basis, to get it through the council. So, do I hear a motion to approve this resolution?
Move to approve. Second.
Moving second, would you read the resolution, Laura?
Resolution number R-23-19, a resolution authorizing the intergovernmental sale of certain property to the city of Palouse, Washington.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much, Mike. Next resolution before the council tonight is one declaring the existence of a disaster due to severe damage caused by high water and flooding and waiving the city's procurement policy. With that, we'll go to our city attorney, Laura.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As we've already discussed tonight, the events of April 9 were a sudden and unexpected event. In order for the city to be able to immediately proceed with procuring services to repair damage and mitigate the damages that had happened, the mayor did declare an emergency. The only other times I can think of that we've had to declare an emergency is when motorists keep taking out
Our signal.
traffic light. So this was unusual. But in order, according to city code, when the mayor declares a disaster, the city council has to ratify the award of contracts that were made as a result of that contract declaration. So there were three contracts, that were awarded by Public Works Department. One to Motley, another one to Lelandia, which does business as Leland Lawn and King Services. And I think one's missing in the request for council action.
All right.
There's a third one, so I apologize. Oh, King Services.
King Services.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. So the action requested of you is to adopt the resolution ratifying the award of those contracts pursuant to the emergency declaration.
Okay. Al?
Yeah, I just want to say, this is great. The people that we've hired are on it. Motley and Motley's moving their butts. Lelandia's already done their stuff. I've had more people tell me we're doing a great job moving fast with this, so thank you for doing the emergency declaration, because
It's great to have these established
It's
firms.
making it-
Motley and Motley have been working on paving. We had to do the whole parking lot over again. We have sidewalks out there. But because we can do this, and just like when we had the light at the busiest intersection in town in Grand and Main, when that went, we had to get to it right away. Otherwise, we went through the bid procedure, it'd be for...
they're doing a great job.
Yeah, thank you. Do I hear a motion to approve this?
Move to adopt.
Second.
Second?
Resolution number R-24-19, a resolution of the City Council, City of Pullman, Whitman County, Washington, declaring the existence of a disaster due to severe damage caused by high waters and flooding, waiving the city's procurement policy, ratifying the award of contracts necessary to repair and mitigate flood damage, and other matters properly related thereto.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item number 3 is another resolution accepting the bid of Mega D excavation for Crestview Street and miscellaneous stormwater improvements. And with that, Kevin Gardis, our Public Works Director.
Thank you, Mayor. The scope of contract 18-01 Crestview Street miscellaneous stormwater improvements provides for drainage improvements to eliminate slipping hazards on city sidewalks and paths at 3 locations. And there's a map in your council packet. Crestview Street sidewalk from Grand Avenue to the main entrance to the new City Hall building, Rocky Way sidewalk between Grand Avenue and Water Street, Hawaii Road pathway at both entrances to Sunnyside Park. Additional work includes striping a left turn lane on Crestview to the new City Hall entrance, grading to improve sight distance for motorists leaving the new City Hall parking lot, new 7-foot sidewalk along City Hall frontage on Crestview, and a new driveway approach to facilitate, among other things, better transit bus access to the new City Hall site. 2 bids were received on April 11th. The low bidder was Mega D Excavation LLC at $480,927.21, which is just under the engineer's estimate of $484,980.86. A copy of the bid summary is included in your council packet. Project funding is from the Stormwater Fund, the Sewer Maintenance Budget of the Utility Fund, and the Arterial Street Fund. Construction is scheduled for completion by September 20th. Staff is recommending award to Mega D Excavation LLC. And I did have a photo I wanted to show you of the sidewalk along Crestview. Hopefully I can pull it up real quick. So this was taken a couple years ago. So this is the example of the slipping hazards at this project.
And right above is the new city hall.
Correct, correct. And Alan Davis fell on this particular section.
It definitely needs work.
I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Eileen?
I have a sort of related question, and this is probably just because I'm an idiot. We've been striping crosswalks. The crews have been out working striping crosswalks. I don't know how you find the time to stripe crosswalks in the wake of all this other damage. But for some reason, I noticed that there are two different kinds of crosswalk markings. Can you explain the rationale between why some, the east and west, are one, there are the blocks, and then the north-south are the stripes, or have I got it backwards?
I might ask Clayton to help me if I get this wrong.
Is there a warrant or something on this, or?
We call them piano keys.
Yeah.
They're more obvious.
Yes.
So in high visibility places with traffic, we typically do piano keys. Is that correct?
High visibility.
Yeah.
I notice there's no flats, so it's just basically the key.
Yeah.
We do those first, and then we paint the bars and everything.
Okay,
yeah.
so there's no like, one goes east-west, the other one goes north-south?
No,
Okay.
they're optional, and so in areas where we have a lot of pedestrian traffic or we've had issues, we use the piano keys too.
Good, excellent. Any other questions? Then do I hear a motion on this resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Resolution number R-25-19, a resolution accepting the bid of Mega D Excavation LLC for Crestview Street and miscellaneous stormwater improvements and authorizing execution and delivery of the contract for said project.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item number 4 is a resolution accepting the bid of Mega D for South Street utility replacement. And this time, Clayton Forsman is on board.
All right, thank you, Mayor, City Council. So the item before you tonight is to re-award the South Street utility replacement contract. This contract originally came before you in January, and it was awarded on January 15th. Since that time, the contractor, M Industries LLC, has demonstrated a lack to meet deadlines and to perform the work. As you can see in the staff report, this became evident in both the amount of time needed for the contracts to be fully executed and the lack of progress once contracts were executed. Based on these facts and our lack of response from the contractor, staff seek the counsel of the city attorney, and as a result, it was determined that terminating the contract was in the best interests of the city of Pullman. Therefore, on April 3rd, a notice of termination was issued to the contractor M Industries LLC effective April 4th. Since that time, staff moved forward and contacted the next lowest responsible bidder, which is Mega D Excavation LLC, and staff also confirmed that Mega D Excavation LLC would honor their January bid amount of $52,101.95. Staff does not feel that rebidding the project would result in a lower bid amount. Therefore, staff is recommending council re-award contract 18-14 South Street Utility Replacement Project to Mega D Excavation LLC.
Questions or comments? And do I hear a motion on this resolution?
So moved. Second.
Move second. Lori?
Resolution number R-26-19, a resolution accepting the bid of Mega D Excavation LLC for South Street Utility Replacement and authorizing execution and delivery of the contract for said project.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item number 5, another resolution, this time to Motley and Motley for Path 2019, authorizing execution and delivery of said project. Clayton?
Thank you. The item before you tonight is to re-award the past 2019 contract. This contract was originally awarded on January 15th. Since that time, despite ongoing communication initiated by city staff, the contractor, M Industries LLC, has failed to provide the necessary paperwork to allow the contract to be executed. Based on this failure and the potential delays caused as a result, staff seek the counsel of the city attorney, and as a result, a notice of revocation was issued to the contractor, M Industries LLC, on April 3rd. Moving forward, staff contacted the next lowest responsible bidder, which is Motley Motley Incorporated, and staff also confirmed that Motley Motley Incorporated would honor their January bid amount of $239,186.50. Staff does not feel that rebidding the project would result in a lower bid amount, especially this time of year. Therefore, staff is recommending council re-award contract 19-02 past 2019 to Motley Motley Incorporated.
Al?
I've got a couple of things, and I waited for the second re-award here to ask this question. Who is this M Industries company? They've got a little pattern going here, and how do we open our bids or not open our bids, and do we have a situation where we can say we won't take bids from some company because of their lack of working with us?
Yes.
Okay. So are they on that list now?
On the
Probably.
list, yeah.
It isn't a list, it's simply a factor that is considered when determining
Okay.
whether they are a responsible bidder.
Right, that's the term responsible, and since they have a very bad record here, obviously.
Right.
Have they done work for us before?
They were a subcontractor on Fire Station 2's expansion, and they were difficult with paperwork. Some contractors just aren't very good with paperwork. Kara Haley, our city attorney, actually called references.
City engineer.
That's
the attorney.
She could be an attorney.
She called references, and we actually tracked down people that weren't listed as references, and generally, people spoke highly of them. So it was kind of a disconnect there. We thought, okay, they'll probably take a little managing, but it was just terrible, so.
Okay, I would caution us
Right.
taking them. And then I have some other questions. Okay, so first one is, and I'm going to vary from this contract because it kind of is really close to where we have another path that was supposed to be completed from Center Street up, I don't know what you're calling it, the Whispering Hills path or
Yeah.
whatever. Has that contract been awarded for that to be built?
It has not. Sam Nasrallah, one of our civil engineers, is designing it right now, so he's fairly close to having it complete, and our intent was to bid it out. But now that the council is potentially going to award this to Motley and Motley, we may go back and look at adding that work to this contract. So we're going to kind of look at that, depending on how council votes.
I would support that. And then my last one here is, and I've said this before at council meetings in here, when it comes to development in town and us requiring paths and walkability and all that kind of thing, and with this being the I-10 linear path, you know, we had them put in a gravel path, and now we're going back in under the city's dollar and paying for it to be paved. I think that that should be, and I believe some of this, it's a matter of what we ask them to do. But if we're going to if we're going to pave these, then I think that these should be paved by the developers as we move along. So can you explain some of that to me? How that works or what we do?
Is there some utilities involved with this one?
Yeah, so the path that's being paved through Atani Linear Park, a small part of it's being paid for with stormwater fund money to provide access for the portion that's along some stormwater ponds. The way our design standards read, the developer has to put in an all-weather access road. It's a judgment call depending on steepness, depending on where the access is located, whether we ask them to pave it or not. We did not ask them to pave this particular section. The remainder of the path that's being paved was part of a earlier development, and I think it essentially just went along some stormwater facilities and along the linear park. And that was given to the city or dedicated to the city as part of an earlier development by the Itanis.
So I'm all for accepting gifts from developers, but when we do that, I think we need to have in place things where, well, we'll accept it, but you got to finish it type thing. Is kind of, I just want to bring this up because we're spending $100,000 to pave this path when that's money we could use somewhere else. So I just wanted to make that point personally on all of this, so.
Be like a quasi-impact fee, right? I mean,
I'm not suggesting anything at this point. I said what I said.
Any other comments or questions on this?
Yeah, just a comment on Al's comment. I think anytime we're putting in paths, we need to look at paving them and requiring paving just for accessibility. I mean, some of our paths may be too steep for a wheelchair to get access up, but if we're providing a path, if we're providing for that, like, we should be looking at making it as accessible as possible.
Okay. Do I hear a motion on this resolution?
Second.
Second?
Resolution number R-27-19, a resolution accepting the bid of Motley Inc. for Paths 2019 and authorizing execution and delivery of the contract for said project.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Now, a discussion item on the city's ancient phone system by Mike Urban and Wayne Brunnick.
Thank you. Thanks for not calling it an antique either yet. So, what? Legacy. And actually, that's a term that Wayne and I have been back and forth an awful lot on this particular issue. So, I'm before you tonight looking for some sort of motion to authorize us to move forward or head nod or whatever the proper protocol is at this point. But because of the complexity of this issue, I wanted to bring it to you first for first blush, get some of these questions answered for you to make sure we're on the right path, because there is a little bit of a shift in tactics here. So Ring Central was looked at as a possible replacement for our legacy phone system as a lease, cloud-based support leased hardware as opposed to going out and putting more money into owned hardware. And when we shifted and looked at all the different costs, the cost of providing the phone service and also the lease, and comparing that to what we're doing right now, we're looking at a less than a $400 a month price difference and not going out and making that full $176,000 capital purchase, which was already approved in the 2019 CIP. But because the lease of the equipment is over the $10,000 threshold that the CIP allows for, I felt it was appropriate to come back to council and say, here's what we're looking at now, and there's just a little bit of a difference than what was originally intended. And I think the difference is really worth looking at for several reasons. Number one, it pushes the maintenance of the equipment onto Ring Central. So it future-proofs us to a certain degree, especially on a 5-year term, where we can look at the new equipment or new whatever at the end of the 5 years and, continue to keep up and keep going with it, as opposed to being in a situation like we're at now where, like, I'll tell you right now, I can't access my voicemails. So that's a problem for the finance director to have, where Ring Central will have a voicemail interface a lot like what you see on your mobile phones, where you can do visual and pick the ones that you need to address immediately. The other part of the accessibility on this particular system is that I can take my computer to anywhere in the city, plug in, log in, and then my phone is with me, basically through my computer as that cloud-based. And then there's also additional accessibility through our mobile phones as well. So as things happen and things get moved around, moving between this building and the new City Hall building, everything is completely portable. So we have that opportunity. And then other new functions that come along with this. There'll be ability for web collaboration for meetings, both internally and externally, instant messaging amongst departments and even within your own department. And there's a lot of stuff going on here, so bear with me, make sure I got through some of this. Additional productivity tools, yes, hardware. So The other part of this too, you'll see in your fiscal impact, there's a $5,575 professional services implementation charge with this. And what that is, their normal rate is $16,000 approximately, but they're going to give us a very large credit if we decide to go with their implementation so they can deploy it citywide. This will give the IT department a chance to continue to go through their work and not be bogged down with trying to learn this whole new system and troubleshoot it as we go, because we're looking at a dynamic project where things are going to pop up, and we're talking about untangling 20 plus years of an old system, and most importantly, porting the old numbers over from the current system to the new Ring Central, so our direct lines will not change numbers. So there's some real value in that, and the other part of that too is they will come in and do training with the city on, according to our plan and how we want to do it, on a couple different options. And then the other part of that training is they will be videoing it, so any new hires, we can just show them the video and not have to spend a whole lot of time doing the hand-over-hand type of training. We've done a proof of concept back in the fall and tried this in several other departments. We've reached out to the public safety departments, to both Chief Jenkins and Chief Heston, and talked about some of their concerns and worked through addressing those. And then we've also called the city of Oak Harbor and the city of Poulsbo, who have just implemented these two systems as well, asked them what they learned from the implementation, make sure that we're not going to make any of the same mistakes they do. So we feel very comfortable about going forward with this, of course, with council's approval, since it's a little shift in the CIP dollars that are being spent, because it's a lease as opposed to buying the equipment, but it's a short-term lease. Ring Central is part of NASPO, which is basically the state contract arm of purchasing, the National Association of Purchasing Officers. So this is essentially buying it on the state contract at these rates. So we're going to be able to answer any of the questions, well, we better be able to answer any of the questions you have, but after we answer the questions that you have, what we're looking for is just some sort of approval to go forward, meet with Ring Central, get a build-out schedule nailed down, because we haven't talked to them yet about what their availability is, get the contract back from them, make sure we could put it in front of the city attorney, make sure there's escape clause language in there in case this turns out to be not what we're expecting at the point, and then be able to bring this back to you for further approval on the 7th.
Okay, question. Nathan?
So, forgive me, these questions may be very simple, but both Wayne and yourself, if you can answer some of them. In the customer responsibilities, we're responsible for the LAN infrastructure, is that correct? Is that something we already do?
That's something we already do.
Okay, so it's no big deal. The other one was providing workspace for Ring Central on-site personnel. Is that only when needed?
That would be when needed, exactly.
Okay.
During the implementation phase. Once the implementation phase is over with, then they won't need any space.
Okay, and the last question is regarding the credit card or POS, point of sale machines. We do that independently, correct? That is not something that... Okay.
Yeah, that's something that we'll be doing independently. I'm working on that on a separate part right there, and then whatever we bring in for point of sale, we're going to make sure it has to integrate with Ring Central, as well as some of the other items like the Envision software that the library has done and those type of things. And so we're going to want to make sure, and there's a bunch of other departments that want to start being able to do credit cards, so we want to make sure the PCI compliance with those credit cards intertwines with Ring Central, and this isn't the first time Ring Central has been down those roads on that, so we feel very comfortable that that'll be able to be addressed.
Great, yeah, I just wanted to make sure that they're all going to be talking to each other. It's, no hang-ups there, so, okay, I appreciate it.
Okay.
The main question that comes to my mind is in terms of timing of implementation, and are we looking at doing this in concert with our actual move to the new location? Otherwise, would we be incurring any additional costs if we do it beforehand?
Actually, the implementation, we would like to be up and running well before the 4th of July on this, and because it's cloud-based, it's portable. It'll just port right over very simply, no fuss, no muss. But as we put in the support in new City Hall for these types of things, the telephone's at the top of our mind.
Okay, Eileen?
So it's portable to the new City Hall, I think that's great, but what then remains in this building?
Nothing.
So district court will have its own county phones.
That's correct. And Adam and myself have already reached out to district court and notified them that we're going this direction. You guys are going to have to find something else. And I've actually talked to their IT folks, and they've been in touch with me. Well, what are you guys doing? So we've been kind of collaborating and trying to help them out, trying to, if they need our help, we're there for them, so.
Other questions? Dan? Jeff? Oh.
Just a comment. I really appreciate the timeline for deployment, the way you laid it out. It was very easy to follow that. So thank you.
We're going to do our best to make sure Ring Central comes up, their timeline will kind of match our hope. But yeah.
So I'm sensing from the council to proceed.
Yep. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. We'll get with Ring Central, come back to you with the contract at a future meeting, and if any questions come up between now and then, feel free to reach out, or I'll be there to answer questions too at the next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any new business to come before the council tonight? Seeing, I want you to know ahead of time that Tuesday, April 30th, that meeting has been canceled. We're moving things down to the May 7th meeting, so you will have a night off on April 30th. With that, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Moving second, all those in favor? Now let's see how fast you are on board docs. Did you figure out which one that was?
I'm not even doing board docs.
Okay, just wanted. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
She's just
9 o'clock on the
the
Monday.
training coordinator.